Well, now, I got another rant for you. And my rant today is on knowledge or education. Now, we're going to start with the makeup of Christianity. In the beginning of the makeup of Christianity, there was 7 different Christian religions. One of these religions was called the Gnostics. Today, the Gnostics are seen as atheists. They were not atheists back then. They were more, I'd say, purist. What they believed was there was no central leader to the church. In other words, you did not have a pope or a cardinal or a Baptist or a priest or a pastor. Everybody had the right to be part of that church and have a say in that church. They believed, and it didn't matter if you were male or female, they believed in following the word of Jesus Christ. And that if you followed in the word and the footsteps of Jesus Christ, you would grow more spiritual. And you will become more spiritual like Jesus Christ. They did not so much focus on the crucifixion of Jesus Christ as they focused on the lessons of Jesus Christ. Well, there was one church that was quite big already, and they didn't like basics of the church. So they branded them as heretics. And you were either forced to join what became the Catholic Church, or you would be punished for belonging to the other churches. To the point you could be murdered for belonging to those other churches as a heretic. And this solidified Christianity into one religion. Now you say, well, how does that subjugate the people? They further went on to making sure that the Bible was wrote in Latin. Back in those days, the only people who understood Latin were those of the Catholic Church and royalty, rich people, who were privileged over their peasants. And so the peasants couldn't read the Bible. They may have been able to read German. They may have been able to read English. They may have even been able to read Farsis, but they could not read Latin. This allowed the Bible to be something that only the church could speak on. And they could twist that Bible any way they want to mean whatever they wanted it to mean, keeping their parishioners, the poor, in line, making sure that the poor wouldn't step out of line because they counted on the Catholic Church to help them to get to heaven. They didn't count on the words of Jesus Christ or the true words of Jesus Christ. They didn't count on the true words of the Bible. They counted on what the leaders of the church accepted as the teaching of their religion. And quite often, they took from that book, quite much like ISIS does, with their ignorant followers who cannot read the Quran. They took from that Bible what suited them to keep their people in line and to make their people punish others who did not follow the same line. Ignorance is what kept the people in line and made them subjugations of the church, to the abuse of the church. Once somebody started translating, a wealthy man who had learned Latin had started translating the Bible from Latin into other languages. I think it started into German, and it went to English, and it went to the other languages. The church tried to hunt these people down because they didn't want the Bible to be printed so everybody could read it. Because if everybody could read it, they could see how the church was subjugating them and how the wealthy was subjugating them and tricking them into following the religion the way they said it should be, making it so that the common folk were too afraid to do anything past what the church or the wealthy told them that they could do. And they hunted these people down who were translating the Bible, and they killed them. One of them ended up coming to America, and that was how he escaped his punishment. Now I want you to stop and think about what they're doing today under the auspice of critical race theory. They're out there and they're trying to stop schools and books from teaching people about the history of slavery. That is not critical race theory. That is history. History is meant to be read. It is not meant for your children to feel bad because your ancestors were a bunch of racist, bigoted jerks. It is meant to teach you what your ancestors did back in those days so that today you can be better than that. It teaches you the bad of the past so that you can make a better future. But they don't want you to learn that. And you may be asking yourself why. Because the more black people who learn about their history, the easier it makes it for white people to subjugate them. Now, one of these days, they're also going to take away the teaching of things like the Great Depression. Because during the Great Depression, the wealthy were doing fine. It was the poor that weren't doing fine. And there was no middle class. If they stopped teaching about the Great Depression and how we came out of that, they can bring us back to a time where the middle class no longer existed and that the wealthy had everything and the poor had to struggle and accept everything, all the abuse the wealthy put on them. And they can make you think that because you're white and poor, you're more superior to a black and poor person. It's a backslide. And that's what they want. They want you ignorant. Because as long as you're ignorant to the facts, you're more easily manipulated. And that's how they want it. And I want you parents to think about that the next time some school says your little kid can't learn about black history, or Native American history, or Latino history. Whether your kid is black, white, Latino, Oriental, or whatever race they are, when your schools start taking books out that teach about your ancestors' history, I want you to think about how that is going to affect your children's future knowledge. Even you white kids. How is that going to affect your children's future knowledge if these powerful, rich politicians keep going down the same road that they're going and you keep on accepting it? When is it are they going to ban books and teaching of your own back history so that it only shows the rich and the powerful in a positive light, so it's easier to subjugate you? When are you going to allow that to happen? Or when are you going to stop that? By demanding the true history of all races, all religions, all rich, all poor, to allow the history of it all to be taught in schools. To stop allowing the powerful to manipulate you into thinking that learning the history of the African Americans, the Asian Americans, the Latino Americans, or the Native Americans in this nation is somehow critical race theory. It isn't. It's history. And although there may be bad things that have happened in history, history itself is not bad. History itself is good. And what your ancestors did to others, whether it be the rich ancestors against the poor ancestors, the white ancestors against the black and brown ancestors, no matter what they did in the past, has no effect on what you do today unless you allow it to. Unless you choose not to learn from it. Unless you choose not to take a look at society today and say, hey, this isn't right. And I know this is an effect of the past. And we need to move beyond that and make our future better. If you're not going to do that, then you are doomed. Especially if you're not one of the rich or you're not one of the powerful politicians out there. You are doomed. Just the way the church doomed many. They doomed people during the time that people could not read the Bible. They doomed the ignorant who were wealthy enough to own their own property. They doomed them as witches because they could. And it made it so that they could take those people's property. They doomed women for generations to never be able to have a right to have a say to who they marry. What happens in their home? What happens to their body? To whether or not, if their father died, they had the right to own any property that was given to them, that they inherited, that they could own it and choose what happened to it, that it became the husband's property. Even their children were the husband's property. Which meant if a woman gave birth to a child, if the father didn't want it, he could put it up for adoption without the mother having a say. And they did this to black and brown people that they enslaved for generations and for much longer than it was done to women. So you need to stop and think about these new rules in government in your states where they're refusing to allow black and brown history to be taught. And ask yourself, when are they going to take away your right to learn about how the poor used to be treated, so that they can more easily manipulate and subjugate you into believing that's just the way it is and nothing can be done about it? Because that isn't just the way it is, and something can be done about it. But that's got to be up to you. That's got to be your choice to do something about it. And if you choose not to do anything about it, then you doom yourself to the subjugation of the powerful and the rich. You doom yourself, especially if you're black or brown or woman, to the powers and the abuse of rich religions and politicians. You end up doomed. If you're wondering why politicians talk about the good old days as being back in slavery, during the time of slavery, it's because they know back during those times, the rich and the powerful and the politically powerful and the church had the most power. And nobody else did. Slavery time was not only hard on the slaves themselves. It was hard on anybody who was illiterate. The only people who benefited during slavery, they were white, rich, privileged, and politicians, and belonged to the church. The only church that was acceptable, the Catholic Church. And they belonged to the Mormon Church. You wonder how these churches can build such big cathedrals? It's because they took from the poor. The ones that could give the least, they took the most from. Now think about the taxes that Trump passed, that benefited the most the rich. And you think about the politicians out there who are talking about raising taxes on the middle class and the poor and saying they should pay their fair share. You're paying 30% of your income out to taxes, while your rich boss is paying 15% and even many times nothing to taxes. And the middle class should pay their fair share? And you believe this crap? You follow this crap? You holler for this crap to be done? Especially you Trumplicans. I'm sorry, I'm going to call out the monkey in the room. You're out there and you're hollering for all these things these rich politicians have been pushing on you and lying to you about. You're hollering for them to be implemented. And you're not middle class. You're not rich. You're more than likely poor. And you might have an elderly family member you're struggling to take care of. So the only thing you've got to take care of that elderly family member is the Social Security or the security net that the government has given you to help you take care of that elderly family member. What is the purpose for taking that away from you other than if you're too poor to be able to make it on your own, you're too poor to take care of your elderly family member, then your elderly family member deserves to die. That's all they're doing. Or your disabled child deserves to die. Oh, if you're rich and you've got a disabled child, boy, that child deserves all the best in the world. But if you're poor, your child deserves to die. If your child is different, your child deserves to die. And that's what they're telling you. Just like the church, the Catholic Church, used to lie to their parishioners who could not read Latin in to be able to rob their parishioners of their land, their wealth, their property, and their rights. The rich are trying to do it to you now by denying you the right to learn about history. With all its foxes, with all its wrongs, with all of its nastiness, and with all its good. Because if you don't learn how nasty we could be and how good we were, if you don't learn both sides of it, you will be doomed to repeat it. And the rich and the powerful know that if you repeat it, they benefit from it. And that's why they do that to you. It's not for your own good. It's not for your children's good. It's for their benefit. Nobody's losing any rights from anybody if everybody is treated equally and fairly. If a white man, black man, Native American man, Oriental man, male, female, Latino, does not matter what, if they're all paid the same amount according to their work ethic, according to their educational knowledge on the subject, whether it be taught in school or self-taught. If somebody is knowledgeable enough in a subject to get a job, they all should be paid equally. But they want you to think that because you're a white man, you should get paid more than a white woman. Because you're a white woman, you should get paid more than a black man. Because your worth is determined by the color of your skin, not by your ability to do the job. Your worth is determined by whether or not you have lumps up above or you have lumps down below. Your worth is determined on whether or not you can give birth to a child or you just add to that creation of a child. Think about this. There would be no society if a woman didn't give birth. The only thing a man adds to the equation is their seed. The woman does all the work. But yet, a woman is considered to be lesser than a man. They bring life into this world. And she's considered to be lesser than a man. And just because some man has black skin or brown skin, he's considered to be lesser than that white female. And if you're a colored female, oh, you might as well forget it. You're getting nowhere. How is that right? And how do they get away with that? Because they keep you blind and ignorant as to what the facts are. And as long as you're blind and ignorant and they can determine what you learn, they can keep their power by lying to you. So think about it. Are you an idiot who allows somebody to subjugate you just because they're richer than you, or their skin colors are different than you, or they are different sex than you? Or are you going to be smarter than that? And are you going to make sure your children are smarter than that, and their children are smarter than that, so that the rich and powerful can never again take advantage of you because you're too ignorant to know any better?